How do you find the love of your life? Welcome to the Word, Sound, and Power Hour, where Mark and Avion finish sharing their love story about getting married, going through the challenges of her deportation, miscarriage, and more. Also hear their marital advice on creating the perfect list for finding the love of your life.
What a beautiful day it is to be sitting across from my lovely wife, Avion Blackman, looking at our daughter, Ziza Forevermore. And Kava Hannah is joining us. She is Ziza's nanny, and we've kind of adopted her as our teenage daughter that doesn't think she's a teenager anymore. And so we're sitting here talking about relational advice. And I think that the number one question that we continue to get over and over again is, how did you and Avion meet? How did you guys do it? Well, I don't want to get into that, but how did you guys connect? And Kava Hannah has never heard this whole story, and so we decided to share this story, not just with her, but with the world. So in the last episode, we shared about how Avion had come out of heartbreak of seeing her sister run away, then seeing her sister die, who was her closest best friend, her father die. Avion was raised in a musical family. Avion had many brothers and sisters, and one of these family members was molesting her, and then she was date raped in her early 20s. She had all the reason in the world to be a broken mess when I met her, but she was whole. And if there were cracks, the light was shining through, if you know what I mean. And it all came down to her surrendering her life wholeheartedly to Jesus. When I met her, I had just come out of the worst of situations, and my heart had been ripped out of my chest as well. And I felt like things were just moving too quick. I was thousands of miles away from home, and I felt like this relationship just didn't seem like it was realistic. I mean, different cultures, different backgrounds, very different families. Our family, I have one brother. We get together and have fun. They get together for an argument, and every once in a while a practice would break out. It was a very different, unique situation with her family. So I just came to the conclusion that I was going to leave Trinidad, even though I really connected with her. I was going to go back home, and ultimately God said, I need you to take a break from girls. I told Avion that, and she had a peace about it. And I didn't know how long it would be. Maybe 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. I don't know. What was going through your mind when I said that to you, Avion? And how long were you thinking this could be for? And at what point were you like, hey, forget him. He's out.
Well, at the moment, my gut reaction was what I wrote. And I had a piece about it, and then I laughed. And then, of course, this thoughts, reality started hitting. I was like, wow. But I clearly heard God telling me that he was going to be the one.
Really? You heard that?
I was like, I was
when did you hear that? How many days after meeting me?
It was, I think, by the third day.
Oh, wow.
I knew.
Wow. For me, love at second sight. For you, love on the third day.
No. Third day after you came from when you stayed with us at the house. Yeah, not when I met you, met you. Mm-hmm. And so I was playing, I felt God telling me that. And so here it is. It's like, okay, so this, what is kind of just like hit me. It's like, what the heck is going on?
What are you saying, God?
Yeah.
It's almost like in Israel. So many times they were promised something. And they're like, okay, God, hello.
I had this, I felt like a connection, a deep connection. First time I feel like I could open up to someone like that. I had no fears. I had no, it was different than I always had this kind of God in my heart, because of what I went through. So I remember this kind of almost like a little freak out. It's like, what, okay, no, what's going on? So eventually I called my dad's friend, the same one who counseled me back.
This guy,
so
I'm going to give him the biggest high five in heaven.
I call him my adopted dad, Hal. I called him and I told him what the whole thing. I was like, and I this connection, and I felt God telling me that he was my future husband. That's the first time I've ever felt like that for anyone. And what is this now? And he said, if God really truly told you that, it will happen. You just have to have patience and rely on him and just focus on him now. And I'm like, okay. And I did that. And I remember one of the ways I said, well, maybe I should just move on, I went on a date with someone, and then same thing. I was like, yeah, not going to happen again. And if I remember after that, the person would call and said, so, you want to go out again? Where we go from here? I was like, you know what? We're not going to go out anymore.
Oh, snap. We both shut people down. I didn't know that.
I was like, I'm done. And I told him about you. I said, there's this guy, and I told him what happened. And I said, I feel like God told me I should just wait and not even date or anything. And I said, I'll give myself 2 years. That to me, in God's timing, that's nothing. In His timing, 2 years is nothing. And I was settled with that. I was like, you know what? I wouldn't even go on a date. Just me and God. You
weren't going to date anybody for 2 years after spending 3 days with me.
Yeah, well, I was that convinced that.
Wow.
I felt this peace in my heart.
Horse blinders on. Yeah. It's me and Jesus.
Yeah, it's just like me and God. And then a few weeks passed.
Okay, so for me, I was like 2 weeks in. At first I said, okay, God, estrogen fast, I can do that. Okay, I was thinking 2 weeks is a good number. Those 2 weeks happened, and I felt like there was a level of clarity that I hadn't had before. It was really nice. It's like me and Jesus. All right, I can do this. Let's go another 2 weeks. Another 2 weeks passed. I'm like, this is great. Christ for Eyes got a gig. We didn't have many gigs at that time. And like I said, we weren't trying to get new gigs because of just where I was. But I was obligated to do the other ones. And one of those, the one was in Jamaica. So I go to Jamaica. Sure enough, who is staying in the same hotel as me in Jamaica?
But before that happened.
Yeah, before that happened, what?
We were, on my side of it, we were preparing to go to Jamaica.
Yeah.
Not preparing to go to Jamaica. I had this dream. And
tell me the dream.
I dreamt that we were somewhere and you came up behind my head and pulled my hair like that. And when I looked back, I saw it was you. And I was like, I was so happy that I woke up. And I was like, wow, it felt so real. But, it was like a vision. And then the next day, you were in Jamaica. Your band, Christ. Your band.
Yeah, and if you know anything about Avion, if you really know her, you know that she's a dreamer. And I don't understand it, but a lot of things she dreams come true. Similar to Joseph, not just dreaming, but understanding and interpreting it. So yeah, here I am in Jamaica, far from my home. Here she is, far from her island. And I look in the lobby of my own hotel and I see this whole family robed in white. And who do I see but this sexiest Trinidadian in the world? And I come up behind her and I grab her hair and pull it back.
Oh my gosh.
And I cup my hands over her eyes. And
I look back and who the heck is
touching me?
What?
Sure enough.
Like, what are you doing here?
God had said the time was over for you to take a break. You finally said it's all about me. Now I'm going to give you that one that will be the icing on the cake as long as I'm the cake. God wants to be the cake. And so it was incredible. I got to see her, but to be honest, we didn't get to spend much time together because her family band was playing one show and then the same show as us, and our band was preparing for that show, and we had to deal with some issues with Stitchy, who was an artist back then, and all these different things. So we were kind of like two ships passing in the night. By the time that the last show was over, she had seen our band play. Now at that point, I think she had finally realized, oh snap, I grew up listening to this guy's music. She wasn't a fan of Christopher. She didn't know who I was when she met me. And she only realized when she got a CD that, wait a minute, this is the stuff on the radio that I've been playing. Oh, wait, this is the song I was dancing to at that youth camp. And in the same way, I didn't know her family's music. I knew her dad's songs that were covered by Jamaican artists, but it was like we were two people that were popular in our circles, so much so that we had people trying to hook up with us, but it made us also kind of question people's motives, and neither of us knew each other, and so we accepted each other for who we were, and we also both had a similar, well, popularity, if you will, so it was unique in that we understood each other. We connected with each other in that way. So here I am, blown away by her band and seeing them live, and then at the same time she gets to see us live and meet our band. Tell us how that was.
Oh, well, back then when I prayed to God, about when I wrote this list and I had this I said, I want a godly man, this, that. I also wanted to cleanse my life of bad friends.
Yeah.
And I wanted friends who truly loved God the way I did, the way I connected with God. Because to me, I felt like there were a lot of religious, Christianity to me was lived out more like a religion. The people I knew.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know how to explain it.
It was more about the Pharisee, religious, traditional, and not about the relational, the organic.
Yeah, and I grew up roots, and the way I was brought up loving God, serving God was different than how it was with the traditional way with churches. So I really crave for people who's like that.
Yeah.
And I wanted friends like that. And so that was one of my prayer too. And he answered it in both ways. In one. So when I met Wendy and Letitia and all the rest of the guys in the band, I felt like I met my kindred.
Kindred spirit.
Yeah.
And so she meets the band and they basically say hi over a meal, and then it's time for your family to go. We have one more night together in Jamaica. We're staying in a resort wow. I just realized this. I don't even know if I should share this, but this is the same resort that I was at.
Okay.
Yeah. When I did something as a teenager at 15 that I shouldn't have done. This was, wow. If it was a movie, it's the same exact setting. Mm-hmm. What a trip. One of the worst decisions I made, but still shaped who I was. So I'm getting to repeat it, but do it right. This time I'm not partying and doing all kinds of things in a hotel room with somebody. I am sitting on a beach talking to you and just sharing my heart. I remember we were in a hammock together. We fell asleep in that hammock together. I'd never fallen asleep next to somebody like that. It was just so peaceful. And then before long, we woke up and it was daylight. You had to go. I was going to go to sleep. You had to get ready. You had to pack. Your family was about ready to leave. It was probably 7 a.m. and your family was going to leave at 9 or something like that. I said, okay, well, I'm going to go and get a little bit of sleep. And it'd be great to see you again before. But you know what? Would you consider staying longer? You can move in with Letitia and Wendy, who were in the band, and you could stay a few extra days. Our band was going to stay a few extra days at this all-inclusive resort. It was going to be great. She said, okay. I said, if you can stay longer, don't wake me up. If you are going to go, wake me up so that I can say goodbye to you. And sure enough, it's like 10 or 11 a.m. I get a call. I look at my clock and I realize, oh, she stayed. She didn't wake me up. Hey, how's it going? And I hear her voice and I hear the intercom. I realize she left without saying goodbye. What were you thinking? You're at the airport and you leave without saying goodbye. What was going through your mind?
Oh, well, I didn't want to wake you up.
That's how you know you have the wife for life. She doesn't want to wake you up. That's somebody who loves you. There's a proverb about that. So you're there. You're at the Kingston airport. You drove in a van or a bus from Ocho Rios to Kingston.
It's
Maybe
like 4 hours drive or 3 hours.
2 hours drive, or
Yeah,
it's a few
drive,
hours.
Yeah.
You drove all the way across the island. You're now in an airport, and you say, "Hey, it's a really good thing that I left and that I went to the airport."
Yeah, because we got to the airport and then we realized that you had to pay a departure tax, which was like $100 and something bucks
per person.
And my family didn't have any cash at the time.
You had sold all this clothing from your fashion stuff.
Yeah, I brought a bunch of fashion stuff and sold people, different artists bought stuff from me while I was there.
Muta Baruka's wife bought
she bought
5 tops or something. It was really cool.
Yeah. So I had all this cash on me, and so I paid for all the tax departure. And so we checked in everything. Went in.
You checked in. You checked in your luggage. You paid for the departure tax.
And we went into the gate.
You go into the gate, and then you call me.
Yeah. Well,
from a payphone.
We got to the gate, and then we heard on the intercom that the flight was delayed by 2 or 3 hours or something like that.
Praise the Lord.
So then I was like, well, I have some time to call him. So I called him. And to say, to say goodbye. And that's where we were at.
So you called, and I'm like, why didn't you wake me up? I didn't want to get you up. I'm like, oh man, it would have been awesome if you could have stayed. I would have really enjoyed spending. She's like, yeah, I wish I could now.
Yeah, I prayed about it, and I didn't feel God telling me to stay. And so
you paid for your whole family. Your family, if you had decided to stay, your whole family would have gone all the way to over to the airport, only to not have any money to leave.
It wasn't like, in those times, it wasn't like credit card
Nobody
system.
had that.
Yeah, it was different then.
And so then you're like, now that I've paid, I kind of wish that I could stay. And I said, well, why don't you?
Yeah. I was like, are you crazy? I already checked it. My bags went in the back, everything.
You're like, how would I even get there? And so then I started frantically trying to get friends, and I'm like, I found a ride. I can get a ride all the way over to Kingston to pick you up. If I did that, would that work? And you're like,
I'll call you back.
And so what did you find out? What was the first thing you found out?
I hung up with him, and then I went to pass through the gate, and the guard there said, hey, I would like to go back out. Is it possible to go back out? He's like, yeah, just make sure and take your passport with you and the ticket. So I went back out. Then I went up to the ticket counter, and I told the guy there, I was like, hey, is it possible I can stay longer? He's like, what do you mean? And he said, look up my name. He's like, but you were checked in already. What do you mean? I was like, well, yeah, I would like to stay longer. He's like, you can't do that. I was okay. He said, give me a reason why I should try to make you stay. I was like, well, I fell in love. And then I told him a little bit of the story, and then he started laughing. So he started typing, doing stuff. And he said, every time he's typing, he keep laughing. Like, what am I doing? So he said, okay, well, I managed to get your ticket extended, but the only problem is your bags are in the back there on a big cart. How we can find your bag?
So she calls me, she tells me that. I'm like, see if you can find it.
No, he said, see if you can find it. So he took me back. That's like unheard of. And he took me back there. And
you go back to the tarmac.
Yeah, to the tarmac. And the first bag I saw on the whole thing was my bag. He pulled it off, and so I came back and I called you, and I told you what's up. I said, well, the only thing is I have to pay I don't know what it was, and I was out of money at the time.
Yeah.
And you said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. So I had to eventually give the news to my mom.
Oh gosh.
That must have been fun.
Her mom was not a big fan of me. I was going to take away her best friend, her partner.
So I came up to my family and I was like, hey guys, I'm staying an extra 3 days. And my mom gave me this look, yeah. And she's like, she wanted to explode. And she's like, shaking her head, like, And then my sister looked at me and she's like,
she gives her a thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Good for you.
Good for you.
That is the
Nail it.
And then, so I said goodbye, and Mark jumped in a taxi, and
I jumped in a car that ended up getting in an accident. I saw a dead body on the side of the road. There were so many obstacles to get me from this paradise like Ocho Rios all the way over to the other side of the island to Kingston. And to then pick her up. And when we did,
I waited like 2 hours there in the airport.
You waited there 2 hours. And then when I picked you up, I remember on the way back, sitting in the back seat, and you put your head down on my lap, and I was twisting your dreads, and it was just so right.
I fell asleep because I didn't get any sleep.
She didn't get any sleep. And then the next few days was the most magnificent, sexless honeymoon you've ever had. It was incredible. It was this time of her getting to know the band, us jet skiing together. She put her arms around me, us walking on the sand and hearing Bob Marley sing, "Is This Love? Is This Love?" We'll share the shelter, the roof right over our heads. And I was just thinking, is this it? Is this what I was told that someday I would have again and have right? Is this love that I'm feeling? But it was at the same time, she's never been really showy with her emotions. She was like kind of cold with it. Not cold, but there were times I was asking, do you like me? And what was going through your head?
Well, I said, you have no clue, if you could only read my mind or my heart, I'm head over heels for you. But at the same time, I need to protect my heart.
Yeah. Guarding your heart is the most important thing in all of this. And we're going to get into that a little bit more in a moment. So we have this magical 3 days, all-inclusive resort. And then she says goodbye and we fly back to California and she goes back to Trinidad. And somehow I found a reason to get back to Trinidad. I found 5 reasons to take 5 trips back to Trinidad in the next 5 months. And I never spent more than 2 weeks apart from her. And when I did, I probably spent $5 to $15 a day in those international calling cards. And after visiting Trinidad about 5 more times, the final time I had gone out there, I was like, you know what? I'm really going to get to know this person. I'm going to stay there for 40 days and I'm going to record Gravity, the Gravity album. I'm going to record it with her brother, who didn't know how to produce, but I'm going to teach him how to produce me. That's a funny thing. It's like teaching somebody how to cook for you. I'm going to teach him how to produce. And I set up this little studio with mosquitoes attacking me all day and all night. And the studio was as close to Avion as you are to me right now. She was so and I was over there editing. And I remember one of the songs, I said, "Hey, can you come and play bass?" She said, "Sure." Boom, 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 boom. "Hey, can you sing on this?" She sang.
Hiding place.
Sing it, sing it, sing it.
My voice.
Just a little bit,
right
just
now.
a little bit.
How about you sing it? You know it.
My voice doesn't sound like yours. She sang "You Alone Are My Hiding Place." And it was a janky little recording of it, but it sounded so good that we actually used that version of it. And then she sang on "My Sustenance," and it was just majestic. So she wasn't in the band, but she's already singing on our album. And I got to watch them. And this is a crucial thing. This is something I want to encourage you if you're in a relationship or when you get into a relationship with somebody, is to watch them when they don't think you're watching, with their family and their friends, especially their family. You can't fake the funk when you're around your family. They'll call you out on it. And so what happened was I would watch her band practices through little windows and stuff. And I would watch the entire band argue, sometimes for 45 minutes straight. And she would not raise her voice. She would keep her calm and she would come up with a peaceful solution. She was the peacemaker. And that was what I needed, because my last relationship was the exact opposite. It was warfare. And I needed that peace. I never heard my parents argue. I never heard my parents fight. I never heard them raise their voices at each other. I was raised in the Brady Bunch family, literally. Friends from all around the neighborhood would come over, not just for the food, but to feel like they were in a 70s sitcom. It was a safe place. And I had come out of this torrential relationship and I needed that peace. And Avion definitely was embodying that. And that gave me hope. So after the 40 days of Gravity, I'm there living on Lover's Lane with Avion, who was introduced to me by Don Juan. It was everything that a fairy tale would be made of. I said, "That's it. I'm not coming out to visit you anymore." I said, "You have to come and visit me." So I go to Nashville. I record the rest of the Gravity album. I fly home. She comes out to visit me. Was this your first time in California?
Yeah. No. I had visited before. My brothers.
How many brothers did you have out here?
At the time, I had 4 brothers living out here.
That's the thing when you have 24 brothers and sisters. You got brothers in every area code. So you had already been out here before. Your dad had already been out here. And you were now coming out to visit. How long were you going to visit for?
I think it was a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a month.
Yeah.
And at the end of the month, well, it ended up getting extended to how long?
To 4 months.
Yeah. A few months. However long the maximum is that you can stay. Maybe it was 3 months on a visitor's visa. She stayed for that long. And something else happened during that time. Your mother, who had not been supportive of this relationship, she is walking around the house one day and all of a sudden she hears a voot, voot. She's like, what the heck? Voot, voot, what the? And this was before phones did that. What was it? What was that?
It was a beeper. Is he
beeper?
It? Yeah.
Vibrating beeper.
It was my dad's beeper, old beeper.
Mm-hmm.
So she had a few of my dad's stuff in a box under her bed.
And your dad had died how many years earlier?
About 2. This has been like 2 years already.
So 2 years and the beeper still has battery.
Yeah. So mind you, a few weeks before, my brother was trying to fly her out to come and visit, and she refused to come. And she said, I know Mark would ask her hand in marriage. So I'm not going. No.
I'm not going to California.
I'm not going to California. So this beeper kept beeping, and she eventually found where the noise was coming from, and she found it. And there was a message in it saying, call this number.
She calls the number.
This organization has a ticket in her name, and they were going to honor my dad in New York.
Yeah, there was an award show. Your dad was getting some sort of legacy award or some sort of lifetime achievement award or something for what he did for soca music.
Yeah.
And they had to give it to somebody. The spouse was pretty much the only option.
Yeah.
And so your mom had to fly to New York. Your brother sees that and says, You're not coming to America without coming to California.
It was like obvious. You got to come to California.
Your mom comes to California. And is she staying with us?
No, she's staying with my brother, but she came to visit and spend a night or two.
And at that time, it was over.
Yeah.
She knew.
Once she met Mark's parents, she's like, okay, he comes from good stock.
I came from good stock.
That's what she told me.
Good stock.
Good stock.
Yeah, that's what you want. You want somebody that comes from good stock. And so I asked for her mother for her approval. Her mom gives me it's going to be okay. I approve it. And because I approve it, it can happen now. And then my mom she's a painter. Mm-hmm. And she always has paintings needing to be delivered to galleries and this and that. And so one day I said to Avion, we've got to go to downtown LA and we've got to put a painting in a gallery for my mom. She's like, okay. So we go to downtown LA. We drive down there. We park. I'm not sure if she's really realizing that we're in the jewelry district.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just saw it. Wow, there's a lot of jewelry store here.
Everywhere.
I still didn't pick up on what was going on.
You still had no clue. And then when we park the car and we get out of the car, then you're like, well, what about the painting?
Yeah. Because he left the car and the painting was still in there. It's like, what about the paintings? And he said,
don't worry about it. Come on in.
About it.
Yeah, come on in. And so she follows me in, and then we walk into this jewelry store. At what point did you finally, still did not, my gosh. Sometimes my wife can be
clueless.
Yeah, every once in a while we'll have this conversation, and I look at her eyes, and she knows this very well. You guys heard it earlier. I said something like 5 different ways, and then by the 6th time, I realized she understood me, and part of it is just a cultural thing. But so we walk into the store, and I then have her look around, and I say, "Okay, baby, pick a ring, any ring."
That was when
at that moment, she's like, "What were you thinking then?"
That's when it hit me, like, oh, what's going on here?
I said, pick a ring, any ring. At that point, I held my breath because who knows what was going to happen next. And this was the miracle. This is also how you know you have the right woman. She happens to pick the cheapest ring in the whole place. She's like, I like purple. I like that one.
I like Tanzanite.
She picks Tanzanite. And Tanzanite comes from
Tanzania.
It's beautiful. It's purple, Ziza's favorite color. But at the same time, it's not the most expensive ring. She could have asked for like a, 5-carat diamond with platinum, whatever. But no, and then I finally convinced her to get at least one with some diamonds as the second ring. So she gets the ring and we get in the car and we're driving. I'm like, okay, she's got the ring. I still haven't proposed. When and how am I going to do this? This is kind of like anticlimactic. What's going through your head at this time?
Oh, I was just very happy. It's like, okay, it's because we had talked about it possibly, in the future getting married. So it was like a reality now.
Well, you don't date a Christian long term and visit them 6 times without there being this kind of I'm intentional about this. So then finally we get back to my parents' house. At that point, the sun is setting.
Yeah, it was a beautiful sunset.
And we're at the front porch. Did my mom come out?
Mm-hmm.
My mom came out.
Yeah.
And right as we get to the front porch, I'm like, that's it. I'm not going to wait any longer. This is dumb. I just fell right down to my knee. Mm-hmm. And I looked at you and I said, Avion, Claudette, Trudy, Henrietta, Blackman, would you like another name? Like, would you like one more name? Avion, Claudette, Trudy, Henrietta, Blackman, more. And what did you say?
I said yes.
And you had a big smile on your face. And that smile reminds me of the first time we kissed.
Uh-huh.
We had been together for quite a few months.
It was like 6 months. Yeah.
6 months. And I had not told her I loved her and I had not kissed her. I would encourage you to go as long as you can, even to the wedding day if you can, without the kissing part. Because it does kind of start something else. Mm-hmm. It starts a physical cycle that ultimately can kind of lead to the wrong direction or the right direction at the wrong timing, should I say. Finally, about 6 months in, right upon arriving on probably the last trip to Trinidad.
Yeah. I gotten your papers.
Yeah, I was finally in this place where I felt like, okay, I can move forward in a relationship. And then I just looked at you and said, I love you. And I went in for a kiss. But here's the problem. See that smile? All teeth. When I went in for the kiss, she was smiling so big, I kissed her teeth. Kiss me teeth. I kissed her teeth. I literally kissed her teeth. And it was a weird feeling. It wasn't, again, love at second sight. The good kiss was the second kiss. But so that was the beginning of us. The proposal was incredible, and then she went home, and then I went out to visit her again, and then she came back to visit me, and then she stayed longer, and she joined the band. And at this point, we are in separate rooms, and we are touring. We are playing together. And we're about ready to do a tour together. And we're planning this wedding that's going to cost a lot of money. First advice to anybody planning a wedding that's going to cost a lot of money. Save your money. Spend it on the honeymoon. Spend it on where you're going to live and how you're going to live together. It's much more important. Those memories are going to go so fast. They're fleeting. You won't remember. That day will be a flurry. And so don't spend $6,000, $10,000, $100,000 on a ridiculous wedding. Do something simple. And so we were planning this wedding that could have costed $6,000, $10,000.
Yeah.
And then in Trinidad, and then everybody in the family wanted to, no, it's got to be here. No, I've got to do this. No, we got to get porta potties. No, I got to clear the land. I need this. And they all saw it as as an opportunity. They were excited, but it was an opportunity for people to have a job for a little while too. No. That wasn't what they wanted, but that was the only way to do it. We had to have somebody clear the land. We had to have somebody prepare. And it was a lot of expenses. And so then she's like, you know what? Let's just get married on the beach at 6 a.m. far away from where anybody would want to normally go. Let's get married there. And then only the people that really loved me will show up.
Yeah.
And at that point, we started to realize, wait a minute, if we're going to do that, intentionally have it out of the way, we're about ready to go on tour. Our first tour together. Why do we want to be in different rooms? We should room together, right? And then I talked to my brother, and my brother's like, dude, just get married. I could perform the ceremony. Just come over to my house for my daughter's birthday. I'll perform it upstairs. So we go over while the kids were banging piñatas downstairs. My brother and my wife and I and his wife and my parents sneak upstairs, and no dress, no bouquet.
She brought her veil.
She brought her veil.
I put it in my head. She had a bouquet of flowers, and she handed it to me, and we got
little fake flowers or whatever. Here's your fake, and we got married right there in the bedroom. And it was nice. Mm-hmm. It was the people that mattered. Yeah. At least in my life, and it was sweet. And then we're like, you know what? Let's do a wedding. We're not leaving for another 12 days. Let's get married in 10 days. That'd be nice. Let's do that. So we didn't send out cards. We sent emails. Mm-hmm. And how many people showed up? Like 200 or something?
No. It was about, I want to say 80.
At least 100.
Yeah, it was over 100. Yeah,
it was a lot. Emisi played for it. Mm-hmm. Wendy, who was in our band, was a bridesmaid, and maid of honor. Sorry, it was one of those things where everything just came together. My mom used to do wedding flowers. She did that. She's like, I'll cover the tables. We had our favorite restaurant do Thai food, and at the end of it all, the wedding costed us $200-300 tops. Avion sewed her own dress. Avion sewed my dress.
Your dress?
This is a picture of Avion. You probably can't see it. This is me. It was like one of those Indian we did an Indian themed wedding. It was like a gown that I was wearing. It was something a king would wear. It was really cool. Her mom was there for it. And
my brothers.
It was a really special moment. It didn't cost anything. And everybody that showed up said it was the best wedding they had ever been to. And then we went on a quick honeymoon. Now, interesting little side note here. When we met each other, we knew that we were going to stay pure. And we said, no matter what, no sex until we get married. And then we get married upstairs in my brother's room. And we're like, well, we're going to have an official wedding in 10 days. Let's just wait for that. You know what I mean? It was kind of, even then we were still like waiting. And then about, 7 days into that, we're like, wait a minute. We got a piece of paper that says we're married. Why are we holding out for somebody? No. And it was a beautiful time. The wedding was incredible. And then we went off to a quick honeymoon in Big Bear. And we got married by my brother earlier so that we could get the marriage certificate, because you need that to prove that you're married to a U.S. citizen, especially when you leave the country. So sure enough, we get married privately. We get married publicly. We go on a 2-day honeymoon. We come back. We grab our stuff. We fly out to Europe. We're touring places like the Netherlands. 30 days, magical days. How was the first tour together?
Oh, well, the first concert, I was scared.
Oh, you were so scared. You went pee like 5 minutes earlier. You about ready to get up on stage. You run. You're like, Mark, stall the crowd. I gotta pee again. You ran off.
Because, I didn't, it was all new to me. Even though I played bass for years, it was a different kind of music.
Reggae.
Yeah. So it was just, I was scared there, but I didn't, but I pulled it off.
You did a great job. Best basses we've ever had. So we did this whole tour. It was magical. It was incredible. God provided for us financially. We come home from this tour and she gets in a different line than me at immigration. She's entering using her visitor's visa, and they put her in secondary and they say, we need to go through your bags. I'm like, okay, no problem. I'm sitting there next to her. And then sure enough, the guy goes through the bag and he's like, what's this? Like, that's the marriage certificate. Like, what? You didn't say you were married? Well, you didn't ask.
Yeah, he assumed that you were my boyfriend.
You didn't ask. Well, if you didn't say you were married, you've been lying the whole time. And this was right after 9/11. This was when every airport was cracking down, and she might as well have been a terrorist. And he said, you're entering under false pretenses. You can't enter as a visitor when you're married to a U.S. citizen. I'm like, well, she's married to a U.S. citizen. That's why we got married early. Here's the proof. We're good. We're all clear. I saw the movie Green Card. Aren't we good? Yeah, if you would have stayed in the country, but you can't. You can't leave the country without going through all this, and that. And eventually they threatened jailing her or withdrawing her. And so we chose to have her withdrawn. It was devastating, though.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind?
Well, first of all, we just flew 10 hours.
Yeah.
And then I had to fly back 10 hours without my husband. It was
And they didn't fly you back to
devastating.
Trinidad.
No.
They flew you back to England.
Yeah, where he came from, the last port he came from.
And then I had to get you from Cleveland all the way to UK, and then from UK all the way to Trinidad.
yeah.
And then I had to go home to do a concert with Jimmy Cliff, and then instantly hire an attorney, and then fly, after I got all the paperwork, fly back to Trinidad. And we were told we could get this done within a month. And at the end of the month, we were so excited to get called to the embassy. And then we were told, you've been denied. You are not allowed to go to the US. What the heck do we do now? They said there's only one other option. And that other option is for you to apply for a waiver. It could take at least 6 months. Well, what happens if the waiver doesn't come through? They said, well, then she can't enter the U.S. for 10 years, and you better like Trinidad because you're living here for the rest of your life, or at least for the next 10 years. So we were thinking maybe we can move to Holland because I don't know if Trinidad was the ideal place, but we really liked Holland after that last tour. But we were devastated. It was tough. But what do you do when you go through a situation like that? Do you just wallow in it, or do you serve the Lord wholeheartedly? And so I planted a church out there. She got her whole fashion company going up again. She was sewing daily. We were leading small groups. We were discipling. I was mentoring artists. I was producing artists. And as I started this church, I trained somebody else to be a pastor. And then that 6 months just flew by. It was almost a year total that we spent in Trinidad. But when we got that notice to come to the embassy again, and we were told that the favor of the Lord was upon us and that we were granted, at that point, we were like, which do we do?
Yeah, we were so settled.
And what was that situation? What was that decision like for you?
Well, if you look at it, the answer would be to stay in Trinidad because here it is. I'm there with my family. Business was doing well. We had already planted a church. Mark was settling really nice. Everything was going great. So it felt like, hey, we should probably just stay here. But at the same time, deep down, I felt God saying that we can reach so much more people. He had a different plan for us to take Christafari. Because Christafari was no more because you didn't want to travel.
Yeah. I had shut down Christafari for her. And this was a huge indicator on both sides, guys, is you want to be with a spouse that's willing to drop their world for you. And in our relationship, both of us did that. Mm-hmm. She left her entire business behind, all of her clients, all the fashion stuff. She left her band. She quit her band and it disbanded because of that. She left all that behind to be with me. And then when she was deported or withdrawn from the country, I left Christafari, Line of Zion. I put that all behind. And I went 6 months without a show. Well, one show we had to do in New Zealand that was booked a long time earlier.
Yeah.
And that was a tough time apart.
Yeah.
And I realized at that point, I don't want to spend that time apart from you. So we just won't do it. And there weren't opportunities for us to perform as a band in Trinidad. So you definitely want somebody that's willing to make that sacrifice. I'm glad that we both had those opportunities to do that. So we moved back to America. We decided to do that. And it was a wise decision. There are millions of pastors around the world who are leading a congregation of 100 to 200 people, but there are very few gospel reggae people who are now this month reaching 2 million in just 1 month. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
So fast forward, we get pregnant and we have this hope. We've been trying for years. We didn't want to have a kid for a long time. And then when we finally decided to try, how many years until we...
It took like six years of trying.
6 years of trying. Yeah. She finally gets the good news. We're so excited. We tell the whole band. We hear the heartbeat. And then she has a miscarriage. And it was devastating. What was going through your mind then? How was that for you?
I know. It felt like a death.
It wasn't.
Yeah. Like a part of you was gone. I remember going into some serious depression at that time. And then you said, you know what, we should probably go to Hawaii. And
Hawaii's my answer to to all depression.
Kind of just get you out of this. And then while we were there, like, we started writing songs.
We wrote Let It Go.
Probably, that was like part of the healing process for us, the miscarriage.
Yeah.
We wrote that whole album together, the Third World Girl album. And it was a really nice time of healing. Just the songs that God was giving us was healing us too.
Amen.
And then a year, 8 months later.
Yeah. Sure enough. Surprise. Another heartbeat. And one of my favorite things was when we took that ultrasound, you could see the silhouette of Ziza smiling. It was just so precious. And she truly is a happy baby, and she makes us so happy. You are the happily ever after in our story, Ziza. And now you joining the band. Tell everyone how it is to join the band and to have us as your parents.
It's good. I love my parents.
What do you think about the story, Ziza?
I haven't really heard the whole story, and this is like the first time I'm hearing the whole story. Because on long drives, you tell me half of the story, and then good stuff. I'm like, are you kidding me? I want to hear the rest of the story. And they're just like, okay, another time. And they never ever tell it another time. They just tell the same thing and the same thing and the same thing and the same thing.
Ziza is now 8 years old and joining us on stage, and you have a personality that is just so precious. And we're so grateful for you. Someday we're hoping to write a book telling this story and contrasting our lives, the way I was raised versus hers, and my valleys and her valleys, my hills, her hills, etc. And I think, Ziza, your birth will be the happily ever after, the end of that story and the beginning of hope. We're so grateful for you. And so as we sit here, we're now joined by a few other band members who are going to jump on the couch really quick. Come on over, guys. And we're going to finish these last few minutes with a little relational advice from the Moors to you. And we're going to do a little exercise together. And what I'd love for you guys to do is take notes as you're watching or as you're listening, and fill this out yourself. If you're single, if you're hoping on getting married. By the way, this isn't a wish list for those who are with the wrong person. No, you stay where you're at and you become the right person. But if you're not married yet, get out if it isn't a good fit. So what I want to encourage you guys to do is to create this list. We have Marla joining us as well. Come on over here. You're single, you're young, you're in college. This is the time frame when girls start getting into relationships with boys and learning who they should be with and who they shouldn't be with. And so these are some questions that we have the band go through every year, right? Marcus, do you remember the first time you did this with us?
Yes, I do.
Where were we?
I believe in Africa.
Yeah, we were on a bus driving to the Maasai land. You remember that?
I do, yes.
Now, Nikita, you went through your list. Go for it.
Oh my gosh, my list.
You went through your list, and your list has changed over the years, right?
Yes, it has changed a lot because life experiences happen and you should never become bitter. You can always get better. But yeah, I've learned so much from Pastor Mark and his wife Avion that ultimately it's so important that you know who you are in Christ, because if you know who you are in him, then you'll understand, the purpose that he has for you and the calling that comes with it. And when you know what your calling is, and you're set in that, you're not just going to let anybody just come along and derail you.
Derail is a good word to describe what the enemy wants to do by getting you out of a perfect fit and into an imperfect fit where two people are kind of, limiting each other's or hurting each other's callings, negatively affecting each other's callings. And so here are the questions that I want to have you guys go through. As you fill this out, don't think about any specific person that you already know. That is the number one mistake that people make, is they are thinking about the person they hope to be with in the future. And so they create the one list. This is what I call it, the one list. So write this in your notes, the one list, okay? So don't think about anybody, just have a blank slate right now. And here's the first question. Are you called to someone that is faithful? Yes or no? If you are called to someone that is faithful, to you, that is, and to God, of course, but to you, then say, I am called to someone that is faithful. Meaning that if they're a cheater, if they're a liar, if they're a person who has a side piece, if you know what I mean, get out. Run. Okay. Next thing on the list. I am called to. What are you called to do? Fill in the blank right there. This is really crucial that you decide who you are and what you're called to do, your vision, your mission. Now, as a believer, we're all called to love God, love others, preach the gospel, by the way, regardless in what we do. But what are you called to do? Avion was called to preach the gospel and use music, which means that it would make sense for her to be with someone that was called to do that as well. Okay, next thing you want to put down. List some key personality traits that you're looking for in that person. Okay, again, don't think of somebody you already know. Key personality traits. And then, if you could write down looks. What does this person look like, roughly? Obviously, you could prefer Asian, but black will work, and Latina would be good. Or you could prefer black, but white will work, and, whatever. But what does this person look like, just roughly? Avion actually, I believe you put a white person. That helps. For me, it was definitely a black person. So, black woman specifically. I didn't know it would be a black man, black woman, but that sounds bad. Blackman. Sorry, not black man. So, looks, what kind of person are you attracted to? I was attracted to dreads. She also.
Beard.
So, beard. She said beard. She said beard. So, that's a crucial thing. So,
Meaty calves.
Meaty calves. I've got some meaty calves right here. Look at these things. Anyways,
very.
Now write this down. Something you've liked from a previous relationship that you want. Okay? Something you've liked. So every one of us has been in some sort of relationship where there was something that you liked from that relationship. Put that down. And then, moment of honesty, something you didn't like that you don't want. Mm-hmm. Put that down too. Maybe they did this or they did that or they didn't do this. Well, you put that down. Okay, now put down your favorite Bible verse on marriage. Write that down. This is going to help. This shapes your worldview on marriage. Next one. Favorite description of a wife or a husband in the Bible that you want to see in this person. Let's face it, everybody's thinking of that one biblical truth, that description of a wife or a husband in the Bible that you want to see in that person. Now, I love the passage where it says that a woman must submit, but then when the guy says, submit, the woman looks, the next verse says, and the man should be like Christ who died for the church. So the man says, submit, and the woman says, die. Those aren't the best examples, but find that verse. And next one is favorite truth you've learned from a pastor on marriage. We've all heard so many, but there's one that really rings true that you keep thinking of. In fact, it shapes your worldview. Write that down. Now, it may sound cliche, but something you saw in a movie that you want. Let's face it, this shapes what our expectations are. And so if you don't want to be disappointed, maybe they do large gestures. Maybe it's, they like to write letters or this or that, but whatever it is, something you saw in a movie that you want. Next one is something you saw in a movie or learned from another couple that you don't want. Maybe the Tina Turner story could inspire you in this. But yeah, one way or another, she was beat by her husband. Not a good thing. But something you saw from your parents that you want. That's another one. Okay, this is really, really crucial. Something you saw from your parents you want. Now, if your parents are not married, were not married, you're in a situation like Justin, where he didn't have that example, that visual example, you can use another couple that you admire. Something you saw from your parents that you don't want. You may not want to show your parents this list. But something you saw from your parents that you don't want. Perhaps, I don't know. I don't want to fill in the blank there. You can, okay? Next one. Something you saw from a couple that you want. And the next one. What type of person are you drawn to physically? I described this as well, but the other one could be describing their characteristics. This is physically. And the next one, what talents or giftings do they have? And beyond that, what is their vision and mission in life? Most important one, are they Christian? Literally, you have to put this down because I promise you, at some time, I was just talking with somebody who was a family member who was in a relationship with somebody who renounced their faith and has now become agnostic or atheist or whatever. That's crucial. This should be a deal breaker. Are they a Christian? Now, here's a really, really crucial one. Are they stronger? the same or weaker of a Christian than you. We all know those situations where we get into a relationship and we see hope in them. We see promise in them. But do you want a relationship or do you want a project? This person should not be your project, especially if you're prone to counseling and helping encourage people. Maybe you think that my job is to be a counselor in my own marriage. No. They should not be a project. My friend was a counselor. He was studying to be a counselor, and he was with this girl, and he really loved it because they had these deep, long conversations. But what he was really doing was just counseling her. And I said, you need to come home to a shelter, not to a clinic. You know what I mean? Okay, so next, use one or more adjectives to describe this person. Use a few to describe them. In a perfect world, how long should you be friends with this person before you start dating them? Write that down, because it will not be something you want to stick to later. Mm-hmm. This is like when you give your keys to your friend before you start drinking. Obviously, you shouldn't be drinking in the first place, but it's kind of one of those sobering things you need to do. How long should you be friends with this person before you start dating them? And that's dating. How long should you be engaged before you get married? Now, I lean towards the longest friendship and the shortest engagement, because the engagement is just preparing for the wedding. You got to get to know this person outside of the relationship. You got to get to know this person while watching them with their friends, with their family, with as many people around you as possible. That's when you're going to see the real them. And then the next one. How long do you want to date before you get engaged? Or have they ever been married before? This is a crucial one. Have they ever been married before? For some, it's not a deal breaker at all. It's not an issue. For others, it's like, I don't want somebody that's ever been with somebody, which brings me to my next one. Are they a virgin? Yes or no? Write this down. So you'll just write down never been married or been married or not. Do they have kids? Write that down. Yes or no? For some of you, it'd be like, hey, I'm fine either way. For some of you, it'd be like, no kids. It's a serious thing. Yeah, it was yours. You had that on your list? No kids. Avion had that on her list. Okay. Do you want a fixer-upper? If you don't want one, write no fixer-upper. Okay. Now that you're done with all of this, you have two things you need to do. And these are the most important ones of all. You need to fine-tune this and go up and down it and put an asterisk to the left of any one that is non-negotiable. If it's non-negotiable, like for instance, you're like, well, I prefer a virgin, but if she's made some mistakes and repented, that's fine. Then you don't put an asterisk next to it. But if you desperately need that person to be a Christian no matter what, you put an asterisk next to it. If you need them to be equally yoked, you put an asterisk next to it, etc. Do that. That is so crucial. And then you think of one or two people that call you out on things in life, that aren't afraid to be frank and blunt. In fact, you could call them frank blunt. They're the friend that sticks closer than a brother. And you send them this list and you say, at some time, I'm going to see you with a smile on my face. And you're going to say, what happened? You're going to say, I met that person. They're going to whip out that list. And you need to have them hold you accountable to that. And when you've done that, you have safeguarded your heart. The ultimate goal is to guard your heart. Guard your heart. Out of it is a wellspring of life. And if you don't, it will kill you. So anybody you think is the one, do this. I wrote down the list. Avion wrote down the list. Our list had things on it that we wouldn't have never dreamt of. A bassist, harmony, a singer. I just wanted somebody that was musical. Somebody that liked reggae. I didn't know that her dad would have been a creator of a Caribbean music. God will give you more than you could ever imagine. You have not because you ask not. So write it down. And ultimately, the foundation should be friendship. Any other questions, comments, guys, thoughts? Anything you want to interject in this?
One thing is when you do write this list, to never compromise. I think a lot of people, once they got into someone, some kind of blinders come over, the infatuation or whatever comes over their eyes, and there's these blinders that they're seeing signs that tell them that there's opposite to their list, and they're like, oh, maybe we could work around it. And a whole lot of compromising going on, and compromise is never the way to go. Being unequally yoked is another one, a big one. You could be even unequally yoked with a Christian.
Yeah.
You have to have the same values, the same things, same belief system, in life. It's the core of who you are.
It is.
And you can't compromise on that, because it would make each person miserable.
And I promise you this, you will be more miserable being married to someone in a loveless relationship, sleeping next to them back to back, than you ever would be by yourself, free and single. You have to make this decision. Divorce is not an option. You shouldn't ever get into a relationship, a marriage, with the goal of, well, if it doesn't work, it's okay, I'll have a second chapter. No, you got to get it right. Do it right and get it right and be wise. And that means I think everybody should create a council. A council of accountability, and with that, kind of like mentors, people that I think at every stage, a new mother, with a kid should have 2 or 3 people who can be at her beck and call. She can call them at any time. How do you change a diaper? How do you, this milk isn't coming out or whatever. In the same way, serious, these are serious things, right? But in the same way, relationally, you need to have that. And we think we've arrived. We think we know it all. We think we know what's better than anybody else. And so what we tend to do is when we think we may be going in the wrong direction, we just don't tell others. We don't open that up to others. And so I think having that counsel would be crucial. How about you?
Yeah, I was going to add that I think it's good to acknowledge that relationships is what we all value, whether it's a business relationship or the relationships that we have with our family. Like, we see relationships in every genre, but in this one, particularly romantically, I think it's important to even say, what is a healthy relationship? Because sometimes you don't come from healthy relationships. And so you have to reshape your thinking and be transformed and renewed in your mind of what does that even look like? And obviously, Jesus is the perfect example when it comes to the character that you should have in a good relationship. But then even asking yourself, is this bearing fruit? Because how it says in Hebrews 12:1, let us strip off any weight that is bringing us down. So if you're in a relationship and it's not fruitful, or you're not growing, or it's a distraction to your walk with the Lord, is this really the best thing to continue to stay in? Because sometimes you either are already in a relationship and you don't want to start over, or you desperately want to be in a relationship. And so I think there's so many different scenarios, but when you know who you are and you've worked on you, because I don't think there's any such thing as broken relationships, it's broken people. Yeah. And if there's broken people, then that turns into, broken relationships. But the essence is, have I worked on myself? Yeah. Like, do I even want to be with me if I look at myself? Yeah. And it's so important to have that self-evaluation.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I need you to know, as you're young, as you're teenage, as your hormones are just exploding, sex is a very small component of a relationship. Even if it's the most active, it still is minutes in a week or minutes in a day. It's not a huge amount of time. The rest of the time, you're living with this person. It's a roommate for life. Yeah. It's not just a roommate. You're sharing a bed. You're sharing a toilet. You're sharing a shower. You're sharing a sink. You're sharing life with this person. So you need to marry your best friend that is of the opposite sex. And how can 2 people walk together if they're not in agreement? Well, they can't. They won't be walking for long. They'll be walking apart. And that's why the Bible speaks about being unequally yoked. And I want to end with this. If you ever look at how oxen are yoked, it's wood. It's basically a wood necklace that's clamped down on each of their necks. They have a certain distance in between them, could be 2-3 feet, and there is no give or take in that. They have to be in the same stride. If one of them goes to the left, the one on the right gets choked out. If the one on the right goes to the right, the one on the left gets choked out. If they both start going in the opposite direction, they're choking each other out. And that's what happens when you are trying to drag somebody along in your dream that isn't their vision or mission. You're choking them out, and you're choking yourself out. It's masochistic. It's torture. which is why it's so crucial to run the race. And when you find somebody that can keep up with your pace and is headed in the same direction, wait. If they're still there the next mile, smile. Wait. If they're still there 6 miles later, become their best friend. If they're still there 10 miles later, run the rest of the marathon with them. Introduce yourself. And eventually marry them. And if you marry your best friend, you'll be good to go. If you marry on looks, that person will change. One of the other things last thing I want to say is, if that person were in a dreadful accident and the only thing that worked was their mind and their mouth, would you be comfortable being married to them for the rest of their life for who they are and their personality and their soul? Because that is love. Thank you so much for listening to the Word, Sound, and Power Hour. I hope that you've been empowered in your relationships, empowered in love, empowered to find the one. And I hope that you write out that list and that you send it to somebody, you asterisk those non-negotiables, and that you hold yourself to it. If not, have your friends hold you to it, or else you'll be choked out. Don't be choked out. We love you guys.
Thanks for tuning into the Word, Sound, and Power Hour. If you're single, make sure you create your list today and share it with a friend. And may your first love always be Jesus. God bless you.
Every day I fall more in love with you. I hope that when you look at me, you still feel that way too. And as the years go by, I hope that when I sing this song, tears still fall from your eyes. All my Lord, giving me the love of my life. All my Lord, giving me the love of my life. You're giving me the love, yeah. You're giving me the love of my life. Lord, you're giving me the love. Said it deep. All that I think more. My Lord, all that I think the love, yeah.